This is Fieldsports Channel News. They came from every corner of the British Isles and made their presence felt just yards from number 10 and number 11. Farmers, gamekeepers, hunters, pub owners, tree surgeons, basically anyone who owns a pair of wellies because of mud, not just puddles, amassed in London to protest against Labour's new inheritance tax on farms, which many feel will rip apart small farms and rural communities. Organised in just a matter of days, a dozen speakers brought passion and stardust to Westminster. I caught up with Mo from the Countryside Alliance before things got noisy.
You know, your audience know, it is one big, beautiful patchwork from farmers, gamekeepers, all the shops and pubs and everything that surrounds it. You know, that's what binds us all together. And really, a threat and an attack on one is an attack on all.
Jeremy Clarkson has found out for himself the issues facing British food production and was a real crowd pleaser, asking the government to do the right thing.
I beg of the government to be big, to accept that this was rushed through, it wasn't thought out, and it's a mistake.
Then there were the political leaders.
We know that we haven't always got it right, but this policy is so obviously unfair, so obviously cruel. We will do everything we can to make sure that in a few years' time, if they do not U-turn now, we will reverse this tax. Thank you, everybody.
You're putting food on our tables. You're the beating heart of our rural communities.
Reform UK didn't make an appearance on stage, but I caught up with Sean Matthews and Richard Tice from the party after the event in a pub where they'd been chatting to farmers.
You know, the truth is that the farming community are being absolutely shafted by this woeful Labour government.
It was a fantastic event, and if you want to see my full report, head over to the Farming Britain YouTube channel and please subscribe. While many farmers were in London, the Rural Payment Agency cut their cash. Without warning, the RPA took away the ability for farmers and their agents to submit capital grant applications. The Central Association for Agricultural Valuers published a short note on its website saying that there is a budget review and it's seeking clarity from the government. The RPA pays out an estimated £2 billion in grants to farmers and rural communities every year. The RSPB has set about a huge cost-cutting exercise in an attempt to raise cash. While country people protest in London, speculation is mounting that the RSPB plans to use the money to buy land from farmers at rock-bottom prices. The RSPB is sacking staff at cafes, shops, education programmes and visitor centres across 60 reserves, according to newspaper reports. It has produced a document with cost-cutting proposals, according to one newspaper. The RSPB refused to comment to that newspaper about the document. There are changes on the way to govern how police issue firearms licences in Britain. It comes after a review following the tragic deaths of 6 people in Plymouth in 2021. Jake Davison was licensed to own a shotgun and used it to kill his mother and 4 others before turning the gun on himself 3 years ago. He had previously lost his licence, but it was returned to him after he completed a police probation course. The incident has led to a government review of firearms licensing procedures after a recommendation by the coroner in the case and an independent police review. The result is that Policing Minister Dame Diana Johnson has announced plans to ensure licensing officers will have more consistent training standards nationwide. Digital medical records will also now officially be used as part of the application process. A man has been arrested by Wiltshire police after a horror attack on a farmer whose truck was rammed. Police studied this video taken from inside one of the vehicles taking part in the attack after it was circulated on social media. The poachers surrounded the farmer, rammed his 4-wheel drive and fired catapults at it, smashing the windows. The man, who's in his 20s and comes from the Wokingham area, is in custody while police continue their investigation. They've appealed for witnesses to come forward and have asked for dashcam footage from drivers using the A303 near Amesbury and M3 in Hampshire in the early hours of the 10th of November 2024. They're hoping to find someone who may have seen a convoy of 4-wheel drive vehicles fleeing the scene. It's 20 years since hunting foxes with hounds was banned, but now a new survey suggests that some animal control should be allowed. The YouGov survey published this week says 79% of people think hunting foxes with dogs should remain illegal. The survey also says that 53% of people agree farmers should be allowed to protect their livestock from pests by hunting. Hunting for food was okay, with 72% of people asked, and hunting to control overpopulated species was acceptable to 53% of those asked. The British Hound Sports Association welcomes the survey and says it has no plans to lobby for fox hunting with hounds to be reintroduced. YouGov does not say who commissioned the survey.
But it still have a very sort of black and white approach to the way they're interpreting the answers of questions. And the way they're asking the questions. There's one statistic that says only 1 in 10 Britons would support allowing hunting for purely recreational purposes. As far as hunting with hounds was concerned, it was never for purely recreational purposes. There was always the motivation behind it of fox control.
Scotland's new grouse moor licensing scheme isn't legally safe, and that is forcing a change in the law, which has left antis furious. It's just 5 months since the Scottish Government introduced the Wildlife Management and Muirburn Act, which was part designed to protect birds of prey from being illegally killed on grouse moors. Now the Scottish Government admits that the legislation was flawed, and it has made a change that's been criticised by several groups, including the RSPB. The amount of land governed by the new scheme has been greatly reduced amid fears by Nature Scott the legislation wasn't watertight. It will now allow estates to designate the licensable area to only those parts of a grouse moor where shooting takes place, a restriction that critics say could cover only hundreds of metres rather than hundreds of hectares. It's a move welcomed by conservation groups, including the Countryside Alliance, which was critical about the overbearing nature of the bill when it was announced.
We welcome, obviously, Nature Scott's decision to only licence part of the estate. I mean, that just makes sense, rather than licensing the whole of the estate that you may not necessarily have charge over or control over. What I think doesn't fit too well is the fact that if raptor persecution takes place off that licensed ground, then that licence could still be revoked. I think that needs to be revisited.
Basque is urging its members to complete a survey about Scotland's game and wildlife licensing process. The survey from Nature Scott is aimed at reviewing licensing protocols, including those for lethal control of deer. Basque fears the new system will pass on costs to hunters and introduce a register forcing anyone working in animal control to share their details on a public register.
The approaches to licensing should be based fundamentally on evidence. A guiding principle should be to use the least burdensome approach wherever possible. Obviously, most licenses are issued for reasons of overriding public importance, such as food security, conservation, prevention of diseases and safety. We do not support the creation of a public register in Scotland. Whilst there may be benefits in information around the number and type of individual licenses, on a national scale, we would have serious concerns and cannot see how any further information could be provided without risking identifying individuals applying for licenses or holding licenses.
And finally, we all know that spending too much time at the pick and mix can be a problem. Well, how about this from Tennessee? A bear managed to find its way into a sweet store and clearly has a sweet tooth. Members of staff and the public film it as it makes itself comfortable and tucks into the sweets. We're told the bear eventually had its fill and leaves the store without paying. You are now to date with Fieldsports Channel News. Stalking the stories, fishing for facts.